All right, and welcome back again to the Paisan Sports podcast. Dante De Placido, of course, joined by Zach Deal. How you doing, Zach?
In my mind, every single time I still hear the Deliano, so I honestly was waiting for you to say
I'm keeping
Deliano.
you on your toes, man. It might come again at some point.
But
Your
I
toes.
appreciate it because I feel like that's one of those things that I didn't respect in the time period, but now that it's gone, you know what I mean? I feel like I miss it a little bit, but I'm not trying to entice you to call me that anymore. I like being called by my normal name, but I'm doing great.
But Deliano still, it sounds better.
Deliano definitely adds a little bit of Italian flair to my
A
Metagon.
lot of Italian flair. You go from zero Italian to flair. Zach isn't even like an Italian name. How many paisans do you know named Zach? So then you throw in the Iliano, and all of a sudden,
all right. Don't make me whip out an ancestry.com right here, and we can go through the stats on my ancestry.
It's in your name.
How
It's in your
hot I am
name.
to my Italians, but it is what it is. Not everybody can be Dante De Placido,
As Nick Castellanos makes a catch on the warning track, almost ran out of room.
All right, well, we're going to start off with the Phillies anyway, but one thing I want to start off with talking about the Phillies because everybody talks about how bad Nick Castellanos is, and he's extremely streaky as a hitter. He's batting barely over 200, but the one thing I will say is he plays really good defense. He actually plays above average defense. He has some notable signature catches in the playoffs, and ever since that moment that he had, the 3 sliding catches in the 2022 playoffs, he's just kind of turned around his entire what everybody thinks of him as a defender.
Yeah, no, he's been excellent in the field. And another guy who's excellent, who's been excellent in the field, I don't want to say who's excellent, a guy who we assumed would be excellent in the field going into the season, started off shaky. Now he's looking real good. A guy I want to talk about today, and that's Johan Rojas. Tonight so far, he's thrown out Rhys Hoskins at the plate. He's been hitting the ball a lot better as well, on top of playing great in the field. He has an RBI knock today. I think he's starting to hit the ball a lot better, and he's gone from, in my opinion, being one of the most frustrating hitters on the team. It was him along with Nick Castellanos to now being a guy that you can be a bit more excited about.
I feel like people are just a little bit too harsh on the players that kind of underperform at times on the team. I mean, baseball is just a game of streaks and the margins between like how hot you can get and how cold some people do get. But I feel like even with the pitching staff and some of the hitters at the bottom of the rotation, at the bottom of the batting lineup, my bad, slurring my words a little bit, but I feel like people's expectations are they try and compare like the Taijuan Walkers to Zach Wheeler, and they expect Taijuan Walker to go out there and pitch like Zach Wheeler, or they expect Johan Rojas to go out there and bat like Bryce Harper, and that's just not the reality of the situation. I mean, it's just different players. They're in a position where that's why they're the 5th starting pitcher in the rotation, or that's why they're batting that far down in the lineup, is because that's the player that they are and they provide something different. So, I mean, Johan Rojas has definitely been playing good defense. I think he was overthinking it in the outfield for a little bit of time a couple of weeks ago where he had a couple miscues and errors, but you can always hang your hat on him being a really good above average defender. And when he does get on base, he can score runs because he's fast and runs the base as well. So, I feel like people just need to temper their expectations a little bit from what these players can do compared to the top players on a roster.
I'm going to give the fan base a little more credit than that. I wouldn't look at it as the way Rojas was performing, which is like, wow, that's what you're going to get out of your 9-hole hitter, because not only was he hitting really, really poorly, but, there was a good stretch of games where he didn't look good in the field either. And so then at that point, it's like, well, what do you bring to the table? Now, I was never really that down on him because I had confidence he could get it going. I mean, this was a guy who came up from the minors last year. I think he came up directly from Double-A as there's a home run by Rhys Hoskins. Wow, I wish I had the sound on for this game right now. Rhys Hoskins hits a home run in his return to CBP. That's something.
And the crowd is cheering.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can tell from watching it. The crowd.
This was a big topic when I was listening to sports radio today, WIP, and they were talking about what the ovation would be if he ended up hitting a home run and people just thought it wasn't necessary to cheer him if he does hit a home run. But that just shows good for Rhys. It's 3-0 now. That makes it a 3-1 game. I don't really think that threatens anything too much on the outcome of the game. I mean, it's a 2-run game. So if they can string some hits together in the rest of the lineup, maybe that'll be something. But you kind of know Rhys was kind of open and upfront about it, how emotional of a game that this is. And he was just probably locked into another gear and, smack one out of the park like he used to do when he was in a Phillies uniform.
Yeah, I mean, this has been a great homecoming for Rhys. He had an excellent standing ovation in his first AB, which, I feel like that's not something Utley and Rollins got to experience just as much because at the times they returned to CBP, the attendance was way down in 2015, 2016. But,
Cameron Rupp era. Remember when the Cameron Rupp was like the best player on the Phillies? Like how down they were?
Yeah. Mike Alfranco, Jubal Herrera, Cameron Rupp. We thought Tommy Joseph was going to be good. But yeah, no. So, Rhys got to make his homecoming in front of a huge crowd, which has been, I mean, the crowds that the Phillies have been drawing have been really something to witness because this is just a random Monday in early June. School isn't even out yet. And, it's a damn near sellout crowd, and this is something they're just consistent.
Well, I wouldn't compare this game to being a random Monday because they have been drawing and selling really well. I mean, they had the afternoon games like a Wednesday afternoon or Thursday afternoon that they play pretty frequently, and they'll have like 40,000 people turn up to that game. This one has a little bit more incentive to it just with the whole Rhys Hoskins situation. And you have to think that during the down errors that you just talked about with the Phillies. I mean, before they got Bryce Harper, they were struggling to get people out to the ballpark because they didn't really have anything enticing besides Rhys Hoskins. So people hold a real spot in their heart with Rhys Hoskins because he's somebody that kind of like graduated through the era of the team not being competitive whatsoever and making it on to that team and still being with that team during the 2022 run. And it's really just a shame when you think about it, how his last season was spent being injured the entire time. That was just a really unfortunate scenario because that might have been a reason why if they would have had a fresher glimpse of a recent memory of him hitting the ball, he would probably still be a member of the Phillies if he never got injured.
I think it's tough to say. I mean, the way this roster has been built, it really made sense to keep Harper at first so that you can have, Schwarber, Castellanos, Rojas, and Marsh all playing. But, I mean, you could have easily also kept Rhys and sent Rojas back down to AAA.
You could have just a lot like the thinking is you could have just alternated the DHs between who plays the field and DH between.
Well, you would keep Schwarber at DH. I think if you would have done anything.
I mean, at the end of the day, they did make it to the World Series with him as an everyday left outfielder.
They did do that, but I'm so glad he's a DH now. And speaking,
I'm interested though because with the shape that he's in now, maybe he might have been a better defender. But we're also talking about a guy that we don't even know if outfield was really his designated position. I mean, the guy played catcher.
Well, no, I was going to say if you were to keep Hoskins around, you would put him back first. You would move Harper back to the outfield, and then have an outfield of Marsh, Harper, Costi, and DH Schwarber. Now, speaking of different ways you could go about the lineup, this is another thing I wanted to talk about, the now absence of Brandon Marsh and what that means for the lineup moving forward. And what they've rolled out tonight is exactly what I was hoping to see. I wish this could be the lineup every day. You have Sosa and Stott on the infield, no Whit Merrifield, and you have David Dahl out there in the outfield, who I really wanted to see, kind of step into the role now with Marsh out based on his performance in AAA, batting above 300, 12 home runs. I mean, and this guy's a former All-Star at that, so it's no fluke or anything. And he's showed up big so far tonight with a hit, a run scored, and then a home run. So
It seems like anybody that gets their opportunity in this lineup just makes the most of it, and that's what's just so impressive about this team is they haven't had too many injuries, but they're kind of piling up a little bit at the moment. We also had Ranger over the weekend take a line drive off his pitching hand, which the good thing is he didn't break anything, but it's a bruised hand that's probably going to be irritated, and with the fans being irritated and everybody being irritated with the pitching of Taijuan Walker right now, you could have thought that
it's not awful
things up, but there's not really an avenue. We don't know how much time Ranger's going to miss, if he's going to make his next start on time, if not. But they could have possibly looked to switch things up in the pitching rotation, because I think the Taijuan Walker thing just kind of, is what it is right now. But that's why when we started off the show talking about comparing the bottom guys to the top guys, if we look at Zach Wheeler and what he's able to do on a consistent start-by-start basis compared to what Taijuan Walker does, you also got to think there might be reasoning why they don't want to use Spencer Turnbull too much in the regular seasons, because he's going to play a huge role in the playoffs. And when the Phillies make it to the playoffs, there's no guarantee that Taijuan Walker's going to pitch, like last year, how he didn't pitch at all and he was upset. So I don't think they would hesitate to not pitch him at all in the postseason again. And right now he's just eating up innings, even though it's not the prettiest thing out there. And sometimes they win, sometimes they lose. They do get a lot of run support when he does pitch. But right now, maybe he's just a guy that's just kind of a bridge and a filler, so that Spencer Turnbull, who's only pitched 55 innings in the past couple seasons, can kind of, slowly get activated, and then they'll probably go to a 3-man rotation. Christopher Sanchez will be that fourth guy in the playoffs if they need him, and use Spencer Turnbull as a long reliever come playoff time.
I disagree. I don't think the way Taijuan Walker is pitching right now, the thought process should be it is what it is. The way he's pitching right now, every 5th game is almost a guaranteed loss.
But they're winning. All the games before then are almost guaranteed wins, just based off of how well the pitchers are pitching. Even Christopher Sanchez has better.
It doesn't matter. No, it doesn't matter how well the other pitchers are playing. You can say you can't just live with the idea of winning all 4 games from the rest of the starters and then, throwing the towel on the 5th game with Taijuan. Every regular season game matters.
Every regular season game. I agree that every regular season game matters, but to think that you're going to go 162-0 is just unrealistic, or even close to it. So, I mean, now
obviously, but you got to win. You got to win every game that you can. And when you have a guy who right now his ERA is sitting 5.73, and he looks really awful on the mound, and you have a guy like Spencer Turnbull who pitched a lot better.
He's pitched well, but hasn't proven to be able to pitch for a long period of time. That's the issue.
Well, Taijuan Walker can't pitch at all. What does it matter if he can pitch a long period of time?
I just think there's more to it.
A long period of time, he can't even pitch.
I just think there's more to it than just thinking that Taijuan Walker gets rolled out there with the expectation that the Phillies are going to actually need him when it matters. I just think more so they're going with the flow. They made a decision. Also, the personality trait of Rob Thompson is that he usually gives people a longer leash than normal managers give. Like, he never sits down Castellanos ever, never gives him a break. He gives Alec Boom and Bryson Stott more breaks than he gives Nick Castellanos. And that might be a personality trait of Nick Castellanos, where he doesn't want to sit down. He wants to get out of the slump and hit his way out of the slump. But I just think there's more to it with Taijuan Walker. And he's been horrible. I mean, his best pitch, the splitter, which used to get people out, people are hitting like 500 plus, over 500 batting average on that pitch alone.
Not only that, he's leaving breaking balls right over the plate. He's throwing meatballs.
I mean, his delivery, when he literally throws the ball to the plate, his delivery looks like he's just kind of like going through the motions, just having a catch with somebody. You know what I mean? There's not much to it. I feel like there's not that much effort being put out in him. And I also think he's kind of inside his head a little bit mentally, too, because he knows that the backlash that he's getting from the fans, and he knows how people feel about him.
And Rojas hits a single. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's now a 2-hit game for Johan Rojas as he gets on with 2 outs. Just to clear up any possible confusion for those listening and or watching, we are currently doing this podcast while monitoring the Phillies game live. So anyway, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Continue.
No, it's all good. I was just talking, I'm just saying that I think there's more to the Taijuan Walker situation than people lead on. Than they roll him out there expecting to win, and there's not more of a long-term play and long-term mindset.
I think there's a middle ground here. You're talking about, you can't expect Taijuan Walker, the 5th starter, to go out there and, pitch great or anything. There's some middle ground between being a very good pitcher and being just absolute bottom of the barrel. And especially when you have a much more capable pitcher, starting pitcher, just sitting there in the bullpen. What I'm really hoping the at least good that comes out of Ranger Suarez potentially missing a game. I hope he doesn't miss a game, but if he does, I'm hoping at least, then Turnbull goes back to making another start, pitches lights out, Taijuan Walker gets lit up again. And then maybe that will persuade Rob Thompson to, move Walker to the bullpen and put Spencer Turnbull back in the starting rotation again. I really think the best option is to just trade him. He's making $20 million a year for.
Who's taking on that contract though?
I would give up a prospect just to get rid of that contract. If it's gotten even worse this year from last year, then it's certainly not going to get better the next 2 years. And this is a team that is in win now mode. You can't be stuck in a Sixers situation with Tobias Harris where you're trying.
I know, but that's entirely different. Realistically, the Sixers can't just sit Tobias Harris in a playoff series like when they had him on the roster.
No, but I'm saying
Taijuan Walker. That's why I'm not too worried about it, because I know come playoff time they don't have the confidence in him to roll him out as a starting pitcher. I mean, they don't even probably have the confidence to have him in a long reliever role come playoff time, regardless of if he wants to be a long reliever or not. So,
my point is this. If you go into next offseason without the Taijuan Walker contract, that's $20 million you can spend on a pretty good player.
I mean, I want to get rid of the contract as much as you want to get rid of the contract.
Then at the end of the day, to get rid of him, it would damn well be worth it. Hey, you want to take on the contract? Take a good prospect of ours. I would
mention a prospect. Mention one of the names that you would be willing to give up. Like what tier?
I would have to look at the list. I haven't thought too much into that. I'd have to look at the list of prospects. Maybe the thing off the top of my head, Simon Muzziotti. We've got a plethora of center fielders. We have Marsh can play center field. We have Johan Rojas. We have Christian Pache. We have Justin Crawford in our farm system. Do we need Simon Muzziotti that much? Maybe not.
Well, I heard also people talking about
yes.
One thing, the rumor is that the Phillies are shopping for an outfielder. So that's what rival GMs are saying, that the Phillies are looking for.
Rojas just got picked off. You hate to see it.
Just as I say, he's a good base runner. And I actually kind of was going to be hesitant after
he is a great base runner.
He is fast, but at times he does kind of get himself caught a little bit. He still is getting there mentally. But one, the Phillies are shopping for outfielders, so they're looking for some more outfield help that they can get. And two,
they're looking for
people have also mentioned the thing where trading Johan Rojas might be an option because you have Justin Crawford in your
well, Crawford's not ready yet.
I know he's not ready yet. By the time he's ready and what Johan Rojas is, maybe this might be the maximum value that you can get. But I'm not, we're not in a scenario right now where we're going to be thinking about trading Johan Rojas. It's more so bringing in a platoon guy to that. But if there's some names out there, Taylor Ward, Luis Robert, Luis Roberts, the guy that I would love to get the Phillies to get their hands on.
Yeah,
Would be
yeah.
a phenomenal pickup. I mean, maybe Andrew Benintendi, his
Is
teammate too.
Luis Robert Jr. He's still hurt, right? He's been hurt since like April, I believe.
Yeah, I think he's banged up right now, but I mean, we got some time before the trade deadline. I don't know how long the injury is going to keep him out for, but that would be one of the names. I mean, the Mike Trout thing's kind of unrealistic. He's hurt, obviously, too. And, he's a guy that's over 30. So I kind of want to go younger if I could. I mean, I was banging the drum for them to get Juan Soto this past offseason, and it just seemed like they weren't really interested. And then
And now look
that,
how
but
he's
I mean,
doing.
that was the best possible thing that you could get on the trademark, and you could argue that's the best thing that you could get on the trademark in the past 5 years. Somebody
Yeah,
that
I
young,
mean,
that good.
Juan Soto on the Yankees right now is basically what they were looking for originally when they signed Giancarlo Stanton a number of years ago. A guy who came off an MVP season in Miami. Ever since coming to the Yankees, wasn't quite as good at first, and now has really fallen off. He's hitting a little bit better this year. Last year was
Well, the thing about him is he just cranks dingers. Like, he's just strictly cranking dingers. With Aaron Judge, who's very comparable to him, Aaron Judge also bats for high batting average, and Aaron Judge is on an absolute tear right now. I mean, he started off the season batting like 188, and now since then he's batting like 317. I think in the past like month and a half with 17 home runs. I mean,
Yeah,
he's
and Juan Soto's also cranking a good amount of dingers, while, as always, having an on base
yeah,
percentage.
if the Yankees end up as the number one team, which for a while the Phillies talking about the best record in the league and talking about how many wins that they had. I mean, you got to look at the teams behind them. I mean, the Orioles, the Yankees, and even the Cleveland Guardians are right there with them. I think the Yankees have the most wins in the entire league right now and have overtaken the Phillies, who could have had their best start since 1900 if they would have won last night on Sunday Night Baseball through 60 games. But they weren't able
Well,
to
you
do
know
it.
what? Taiwan Walker, and also Whit Merrifield. I forget what exactly happened last night when I was like, of course, Whit Merrifield is also the reason we're gonna lose this game. I think he might have came up in like a key spot and then struck out or ground into a double play.
Well, Whit Merrifield, you could argue Whit Merrifield's the guy that took Rhys Hoskins' spot.
Yeah, in a way. Oh, here's a guy who's up for the Brewers. This is a young hitter that I really like. Bryce Terang on the Milwaukee Brewers. He's actually hitting.
He steals a lot of bases, doesn't he?
What's that?
Doesn't he steal a lot of bases? He's tops in the league and like right
I
around the
think
top of the league in stolen bases.
the stolen base numbers just around the league have really been up a ton ever since they made the new rule where you can only throw over I think twice. I mean, around the league, from guys like Esteury Ruiz last year, Ellie De La Cruz this year. Guys are stealing a ton of bases now. Yeah, Bryce Terang. He's got 20 already on the season. He's batting 300. I think he's a really intriguing young hitter. And
Yeah,
he's
this series is good because the Brewers are probably going to make the playoffs. They're probably going to win the NL Central, and they're a team that's actually very interesting. They have a lot of names that aren't that like household type names, you know what I mean? But they
yeah.
still have a couple stars mixed in there with Christian Yelich and Rhys Hoskins and Willie Adames, and they just have a bunch of guys that kind of like are under the radar guys that have been performing really well this season. So they're a team that definitely is on the up and up.
Yeah, and you know what? One final thing I want to say about the Phillies before we move on to our next topic is, there's been talks all season long, mainly from Braves fans, because they're a bunch of haters. They're salty about the way the postseason ended for them back-to-back years. But, a lot of talk around the league about how the Phillies haven't beaten anyone good. The Brewers are a very good team. I think they're coming into this game, 36-23. And Phillies, all I'm going to say is they are currently up 2 runs late in the game now. So
I mean, at the end of the day, you play who you play. You know what I
yeah,
mean? And
yeah,
even with
exactly.
like we talked about with the NBA playoffs before about the injuries in the Eastern Conference for the NBA playoffs, even with the injuries all across the league in the MLB, every team deals with injuries, and the Phillies are dealing with some injuries right now. I mean,
Yeah, and
Trey
that's
Turner is
another
one of
thing
the
too. Is they've been
Trey
winning all
Turner's
these
like
games.
at worst, Trey Turner's what at worst a top 25 player in the entire league, and he's missing a significant amount of time. Brandon Marsh has been one of the best hitters on the Phillies roster. He's missing some time. It's not like the Phillies aren't dealing with any injuries, and that they
Yeah,
are playing bad teams. I will admit that, but that's just the schedule that they have drawn.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
and
It is what it is.
yeah, no, I agree 100%. And now, I mean, I think this is a good series for them, really a chance to prove how good they actually are. And so far, things are looking good tonight. I don't want to jinx anything, but things are looking good tonight. So yeah,
I got a random baseball stat for you.
what's
What's the
that?
highest? I'm going to ask you the question, then I'll give you the answer if you can't get it. What's the highest batting average for a team in MLB history? For a team,
As a team batting average,
yeah, in a season.
I'm gonna guess. I'm gonna guess. Let's say 292.
292. You got to up that number, my guy.
292 is a high number for an entire team. Wow. All right. Let's go 313. How's that? 315? 16.
Wait, what did you say? 3.
15.
What does that sound like? 350? 350.
What team batted 350 for the
What
season?
team batted 350?
This
That's
also has been back in like the 1930s or something.
1894. Philadelphia Phillies batted 350 as a team. That's
Well,
a stat,
okay.
buddy.
Here's a
This
piece
is
of
also around the
trivia.
time that the Phillies were claimed to be stealing signs from home plate.
Well,
I
I
think that was
remember
like
hearing
1906-ish.
the Phillies got caught back in those days with an absurd sign stealing method where, and this is a
There's a
true
spring in
story.
like the home plate. It was like a spring in home plate or something crazy like that. It was
No,
something.
I don't know if you're thinking of something different, but what I'm about to say is a true story. Back in like the 1800s or the early 1900s, the Phillies ran a wire underneath the grass, right? And it ran from their bullpen to the third base coach. And so when the bullpen would see, I guess if it was a breaking ball, if the catcher would signal a breaking ball, they would like hit a button that would then cause the third base coach to literally vibrate so that the hitter would know. This is a true story. You can look it up. They
It's the
got
same
caught
wire that was called
almost
on Jose Altuve.
instantly. They got caught almost instantly. It's very funny. But speaking of records from the Phillies in the 1800s, do you know who holds the record for most runs scored in a season by a single player?
Most runs scored by a single player in a season. Is this somebody that I would actually guess, or just some random?
I'll give you one hint. I will give you one hint. He has the same name as a current player, completely unrelated, but there's a current player that he has the
Oh,
same.
with like that dead first and last name?
Yeah.
Hmm.
It was a guy by the name Billy Hamilton, played for the Phillies from 1890 to 1895. And in 1894, actually, I think that's the same season you mentioned,
Yeah.
he scored. Well, that would make sense how he was able to score this many runs. His team was batting 350 because he came around to score 198 runs, which is an
How many
MLB.
RBIs did he have?
He
So how
had
many times did he
90.
try?
He had 90 RBIs.
How many home
He
runs?
he stole 100 bases. This was the dead ball era, so only 4 home runs. He stole 100 bases, drew 128 walks. He led the league in runs, stolen bases, and walks. He batted .403, had an on-base percentage of .521, slugging .523 for a 1.044 OPS. And he finished his career with a career batting average of .344.
Yeah, I mean, some of those numbers in general from way back in the day. I mean,
Oh
I would
my
love to
God.
see footage of that actually happening because I don't even know if I believe those numbers because of how astronomically ridiculous they are.
Harper just ripped a 2-out single in the bottom of the eighth. Good to see him get a hit tonight. But
But
anyway,
as we're talking about, we're about to segue and transition into our next topic. We obviously had Rhys Hoskins coming back to the Philadelphia Phillies and Citizens Bank Park, welcoming himself back with a home run in dramatic fashion. But that leads us to our topic that we're going to talk about next, and we're going to have a little bit of fun, a little bit of conversation here. If anybody's tuning in, you can drop your comments in and give your list of players that you would like to add. So I was thinking the other day as I was coming up with topics for the podcast, thinking about what players from the past could we add to the current Philadelphia sports teams to make them better and maybe be the missing piece to the Philadelphia sports team. So, with that being said, Dante, who would you add to the Phillies, Eagles, or Sixers that have played for them before and add them to the current roster, even though the Sixers have, 2 to 3 guys currently under contract on the roster? So it would kind of be hard to dive
I think
into.
I think the conversation is who would you add to the team that we just witnessed? Like the
Yeah.
roster as it
Yeah,
stood
to
when
make them better. Obviously, the Phillies are in season right now. The Eagles are about to get started, and the Sixers
yeah.
season just ended. So, which all-time players that have already played in the city of Philadelphia would you add? And the sleeper here, I didn't mention this to you already, Dante. I don't know if this is going to change anything, too. It doesn't have to be a player. It could be a coach or a manager as well, if you truly believe that's what could heighten the team. So,
Um, I mean, I currently like our coaches. If Doc Rivers was still the Sixers coach, I would maybe say Larry Brown. I think he was a phenomenal coach, but we have Nick Nurse. I like Nick Nurse. I like Rob Thompson. I like Nick Sirianni. Not as many people
I think
like.
Nick Sirianni would be the one, though, because you got to think Andy Reid as the
He's the most. He's definitely the most replaceable out of the three. But what I think
Yeah.
is great about this topic is I think with all three teams, if you add a star player from the past to them, I think they're a legit
Yeah,
championship.
all 3 teams are pretty much on the brink right now of,
Yeah,
like, they're
and I
trying to
think,
acquire
yeah,
the
and
next
so I
best
think
player.
an all-time player added to the current roster, I think would put either one of these teams over the edge. So I guess let's start with
Since
the Phillies.
we're fresh with baseball talk right now, we're coming off baseball talk, let's start with baseball.
Yeah, yeah. So for the Phillies, I was kind of up in the air between two different players. That being either, well, actually technically three, because I was thinking if you should upgrade center field or upgrade the starting rotation, although it's already great. It's just, there's currently a weak link on there. So I was thinking if you upgrade center field, either Victorino or Richie Ashburn. I mean, Richie Ashburn had the better career, but how well would he translate to today's game? Or you could just, go with the fun choice, bulk up the starting rotation even more, and add in Roy Halladay, which is where I would go.
Yeah, I was thinking about Roy Halladay. Was one of the first names that crossed my mind. Victorina didn't cross my mind, but that was definitely good because I was trying to see which outfielders. Actually, Pat Burrell crossed my mind a little bit. Bobby Abreu crossed my
Yeah.
mind. Bobby Abreu was definitely a sleeper, and he kind of left that team right before they got really, really good, and people forget how good that Bobby Abreu was. If you look at the top 25 all-time list of stats in MLB, Bobby Abreu's on that list for numerous different
Well,
categories.
I once made a TikTok about Bobby Abreu, and about how underrated he was. Just to refresh some people's memories on the crazy numbers he put up during his tenure with the Phillies. He
And he also
had,
had that outrageous home run derby performance too, where he hit
yeah,
20 something home runs in the first round.
actually, including his time with the Yankees and the Angels, Abreu had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 100+ RBI seasons. He had an on base percentage above 400 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times in his career. Batted above 300 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times in his career, and hit at least 20 home runs 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times, 8, 9 times in his career. I mean, he was putting up crazy numbers. It somehow only had 2 All-Star appearances. I personally don't get it.
Well, for baseball too, with how long the season is, like I just don't like how they do the All-Star game. Like, what was it last year? I don't think Blake Snell made the All-Star team, and he ended up being the Cy Young.
Oh yeah, because some guys just really pick things up after the All-Star break. It's such a long
Yeah,
season.
that's what I'm saying. That's why with so many games in the season, I feel like
you look at Jimmy Rollins and Bryce Harper, 2 guys who have won the MVP award without an All-Star appearance that year.
that's
Due to that
just
happening.
outrageous. Doesn't make sense at all.
2
But
outs ninth overall.
But for my guy, I actually went with Brad Lidge. So I thought about the starting rotation and boosting it up. But if we're going to add something to it, and I like how you didn't just like go with Chase Utley or Ryan Howard. Like if you get Ryan Howard, then you have to find a place for Bryce and, move things around because it's not always just about taking the best player, what would be the best fit for this topic of conversation. I mean, you could have took the best player and did it that way and then just found how everybody else would fit around that. But
Mike Schmidt would be the best player.
Like if you take Jimmy Rollins, like Trey Turner or Bryson Stott, is going to be out of his spot, or Chase Utley, then Bryson Stott's going to, have to find somewhere else.
You technically could bring in Mike Schmidt, move Bohm over to first base, and put Harper back in the outfield. You could do that. That's definitely
that's definitely a topic of conversation.
But imagine a starting rotation of Roy Halladay, Zach Wheeler, Aaron Nola, Ranger Suarez, and Christopher Sanchez. I mean,
it would be absolutely phenomenal. But also imagine where this team is playing the way that they're playing now, and then in the 9th inning, you get to just bring in lights out Brad Lidge to just.
I like Alvarado a lot. You know what? I'm starting to. I talked bad about this bullpen in the beginning of the season on this podcast as the Phillies have just won thanks to Jose Alvarado getting the save. I'm really starting to like this bullpen. Kerkering has looked phenomenal out there. I mean, that sweeper he throws, it just looks unhittable. He's been terrific. Matt Strom's
been the guy. He's probably been the best.
Terrific. He now has an ERA of like 0.75. He hasn't given up.
He's in territory of possibly making the All-Star team if we're going to talk about bullpen.
Yeah. Jeff Hoffman's been terrific. I think
Hoffman just still sketches me out a little bit from time to time, but he's someone that's definitely becoming a little bit more reliable. I think Sir Anthony Dominguez in the month of May only gave up 1 total run.
Yeah, Sir Anthony has picked it back up. I mean, between talking about how they've performed throughout most of the season, between Strom, Hoffman, Kerkering, and Alvarado, those are 4 really, really good relievers. And then, you can also mention Sir Anthony starting to pitch a lot better out of the bullpen. Soto still worries me. But yeah, I mean, I'm starting to really like this bullpen. I would feel confident. I feel confident with it going into the postseason. Although, I mean, we still have a long season ahead of us. But if the postseason would start today, I would feel really confident with this bullpen.
Yeah, I think Soto's going to come around. He's slowly coming around a little bit. He was a little shaky in the beginning of the year, but he's definitely kind of, getting back into shape of what he needs to do. And he's just somebody I had so much high hopes for, pun intended, but I had such high hopes for him when they made that trade.
As high hopes is probably playing right now as we speak.
Yeah. But I just thought a lot of Gregory Soto at that young age of having 2 All-Stars under his belt coming from Detroit, and he just hasn't looked like that same pitcher since then. And, it's kind of streaky, and it kind of goes up and down, like a pulse in baseball season. So maybe he comes around towards the end of the year, but I think they have enough bullpen guys right now that they could get the job done, like you said, if the playoffs started now. So lock it in. You got Roy Halladay for the Phillies, and I'm bringing back Brad Lidge.
I think Now that we actually talk about more, I think Abreu would be my second pick. But yeah, I'm going Roy Halladay.
I was a huge Bobby Abreu guy growing up, and he also
Oh,
looked
so
like
was
my
I.
grandfather.
I was a big Abreu fan,
Bobby
definitely.
Bobby Abreu just reminded me of my grandfather too, so I just like even loved him more. I used to always watch the games, and like I said, that home run derby performance that he had back in the day, he was like right before that time period. Like my favorite Philly. Who's your favorite Philly of all time? Mine's Jim Thome. Like that was my time period. It's like right before them. Jim Thome, Mike Lieberthal, David
I
Bell,
mean,
like
we're the same age.
Polanco
We
the first
grew up.
time around.
Yeah, I mean, we're the same age. We grew up watching the same Phillies players. I remember being at the game when David Bell hit a walk-off homer, actually, which was the same night the Phantoms won the minor league cup. Just a little fact there. But a favorite Philly of all time, if we're going, if we're not including guys currently on the roster,
No, we're including guys on the roster. Favorite
because
Philly of
I
all
think
time.
Harper is really up there for me. But
No, he's. I think Bryce Harper. This time period of Phillies baseball is going to be obviously remembered by Bryce Harper. But Bryce Harper is such a likable player that you're going to remember, like even the most minuscule teammates that he has. You know what I mean? You're going to remember the random guys because it's must-watch TV. Like the other night, the impact that Bryce Harper has. I was about to go get food. On Saturday night, and JT had just got to second on that error throw. And he reached first, they threw the ball over the head, and then he got to second. So I don't know. I think it was just an error. I don't even think it was
I think it was like
considered a hit.
by the.
But after that, the next at bat was Bryce Harper coming up. So I'm like, all right, well, I can't leave now. I got to wait to go.
Oh
get
yeah,
food.
Harper
Obviously,
is
the second that I
Harper is
wait
the
for him to
player.
go and watch his at bat, bang,
Yeah,
right over the ESPN bet sign.
Harper's that player that if he's up to the plate, you gotta just stop what you're doing and watch. I remember when he first came here, and I made sure in the first game I was locked in on Bryce Harper's every at bat, and that's not something I really saw sticking throughout his entire tenure as a Philly. It's still to this day. Anytime Harper's at the plate, I have to watch it. But yeah, anyway, I would say
There's some other players that are like that too, because I watched the MLB Network, and I'll watch random games just because I love baseball. And the other day I found myself in the same scenario where I was about to go do something and Aaron Judge was up to bat. And I'm like, I got to stop and watch Aaron Judge hit. And then he hit a 2-run home run in the first inning. So,
yeah,
it's just
that's
the effect
definitely a
that
guy to
some
watch.
superstar players just have.
Yeah, I would say my favorite Philly of all time. It honestly might be Harper, but before Harper came here, it was definitely Utley. But I mean, Harper has just come up so clutch in so many big moments.
I loved Chase Utley. I loved that whole team, but I was probably more so a Jimmy Rollins guy out of all those guys. That was my favorite player, Jimmy Rollins. I mean, I loved all of them too. I mean, Carlos Ruiz. I loved Carlos Ruiz. I loved Ryan Howard. Pat Burrell. I was a big Pat Burrell guy, even though he was kind of, it is what it is type guy. Jason Worth's another classic guy. We can go
I
down the
would
great
say
thing
if I
with,
had to give you my top three from that time, maybe in no particular order, I would go Utley, Hamels, Howard. Those were my.
yeah,
Those
Cole
were
Hamels was a classic. I was a
those
big
were.
Brett Myers guy back in the day too. I love Brett Myers.
I was
Randy
never
Wolf.
that big on Brett Myers. But I mean, he was a hell of a guy, and that walk in the NLDS was phenomenal. But anyway, to move on, where do you want to go next? Sixers or Eagles?
Let's go Sixers. So we'll talk a little basketball here. We'll also give a little update on the NBA playoffs. So the last time that we were talking about the NBA playoffs, we were kind of talking about how the Boston Celtics were the favorites. I think the last time we were on the podcast, they were minus 200 to win the NBA Finals, and Dallas was up 3-0 in the series. They ended up losing one game and then closing it out. And I mean, Minnesota didn't even show up in that game 5 at home. That was embarrassing. I mean, they were down like 29 points at halftime. And I love Anthony Edwards, and he's a killer. But Luka, Luka's just is Luka the best player in the NBA right now?
I was
strictly because he doesn't play like
player in the playoffs. I don't know if I would go best player in the NBA. But
He's
definitely,
definitely not the best two-way player, but I think his impact on offense is so outrageously grand that I think he's better than I would take Luka over Jokic every day of the week, and I'm not even thinking twice about it.
yeah, I'd probably take Luke over
I thought
Jokic.
Luka should have won the MVP this year or SGA, and
Yeah,
that's not me being salty about
no,
Jokic.
it absolutely should have gone to Luca. I think Luca really got robbed.
I hate when they do that stuff too. They just be giving out the award. Like I felt like a couple times that Giannis won too. I mean, he definitely deserved to have an MVP on the board, but just like when you give it to like Jokic, he's putting up those numbers and it's great. But I feel like the NBA just has to put more emphasis on what happens in the playoffs too to name their MVP because Kawhi Leonard was never going to win a regular season MVP. But the year that the Raptors won the championship, if you said that he wasn't the best player in basketball, you were just lying to yourself.
Well, that's why it's a regular season award. I mean, if they based it more off the playoffs, they would announce the MVP at the end of the playoffs as well.
Yeah.
But I think even with the regular season, I think Luca deserved it over
100%.
what he was
Usually
able.
they give it to the guy, like if it's an up and coming guy that's never won the award before and he's putting up the stats that SGA was putting up and gets the number one seed over a two-time already MVP and Jokic and the Nuggets. Like I could have thought that SGA could have easily won the MVP award
Yeah,
as well.
for some reason with Jokic, voters fatigue just does not exist, but exists for guys like Giannis, Steph Curry, you know,
Kind of, you
but
can even say LeBron, even though LeBron's won it four
yeah,
times.
but
I mean,
LeBron
LeBron
won.
was the best player in the league, like way more than four times out of his career.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
that's a good point. I mean, yeah, he did win 4, but he also, I mean,
Like
come on,
2018, I think, what
he
was it,
should have
2018?
won
That was right
MVP.
around when Russell Westbrook won the MVP, but 2018, LeBron that hit multiple game winners in the playoffs and drugged that team to the finals and beat the Celtics. You know what I mean? Like, how is he not the
Yeah.
MVP of the league? Like,
I think LeBron for a very good stretch of time should have won the MVP award pretty much every year, except I would probably say the D Rose MVP season.
well, he won it. That's what it was. LeBron won it 2 years in a row. D Rose won it, and then LeBron won it another 2 years in a row. So
But
that just shows how good D Rose was, though. D Rose was so electric when he was on the scene. So electric.
anyway, moving on to what former Sixers player I would choose to currently join the Sixers. I mean, for almost the entirety of Embiid's era, I always thought about how great it would be to put Allen Iverson on the Sixers, team him up with Embiid. How crazy of a duo that would be. Thought about that for years. But now with Tyrese Maxey, I think a guy who would make a lot more sense is Dr. J. Julius Irving. That's who I
And
would
we're in
pick.
agreement on this. I mean, just an athletic. There's no more value that you can get on a basketball court than an athletic wing that can score and play defense. And
Absolutely.
that's what Dr. J
Yeah.
is. And I think this
And
one's
I
pretty
think that's
easy. I mean, when you
exactly
look
what
all the time,
the
like
team
you're
is.
like Wilt and Joel could not play together. That's just a known thing. Allen
Mhm.
Iverson and Tyrese Maxey are too close to each other, so you don't
Yeah.
know which role. And
You
Allen
will have
Iverson
more
and
size
Tyrese
on
are
the
both
perimeter.
they're both undersized shooting guards that, kind of want to have a point guard around them that can make plays for them and facilitate. So, I mean, it's funny. You could argue a non-derailed career Ben Simmons that you could bring back to this team. Imagine Ben Simmons with a clear head with what he did in his All-Star years with Tyrese
Yeah,
Maxey
that's a
and
good point. If you take
Joel
prime
Embiid.
Ben Simmons, because one thing the Sixers definitely need right now is a great ball handler and playmaker, someone who can really facilitate the offense. So I think if you put Ben Simmons back on this current roster, when he was at his peak, along with two absolute scoring machines in Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid, I think things would be looking a lot better. One guy who definitely wouldn't be my first choice, but I think would be another really good option. I think Drew Holiday, a
Oh,
prime Drew
for sure.
Holiday on this
I remember
roster.
the day that they traded him right before the draft, and I was just so upset about that. And it's just like, why? And that's what started the dungeon era of the Sixers with the process Sixers. Once they got rid of Drew Holiday, then they slowly, completely unraveled and went through that spell of time where they were just completely irrelevant.
And then actually, here's one more point guard, Mo Cheeks. At the time he was, a top 3 playmaker in the NBA. Another great defender. I think he would fit really well in this roster.
Well, this is like basketball is a different conversation because baseball is like a very solo sport. Like when you're at bat, you know what I mean? You kind of like everything comes together with the team. Football, there's 11 players out there, but the NBA, there's only 5 players out on the court, so there's much more of an impact. You could argue Charles Barkley would be a phenomenal choice to bring back and put out there with the rebounding.
I don't think Chuck would really work that much next to Embiid. I mean, I think Embiid needs a forward that can shoot the ball. But I don't hate the idea of it. I wouldn't hate the idea of Andre Iguodala either.
Andre Iguodala, I mean, but that's what I was just about to get.
I would take Mo Cheeks and Drew over him. I think they would be a better fit for this team. I mean, I think this team really would benefit a lot more from a wing.
Even though he was the Sixers' number 1 option, but Andre Iguodala at no point in his career was the number 1 option for any team out there. But he was definitely a very good player, and that's just like when you think about that era of Sixers basketball and how people say, "Oh yeah, trade Embiid, get a king's ransom for him while you can, and rebuild this team around Tyrese Maxey." Like, just think about the years that our best player was like Thaddeus Young. You know what I mean? Like the best players on the team were Andre Miller, not in his prime, and Andre Iguodala out there. You know what I mean? Like we're spoiled right now, regardless of how many times we go through the same loop of Joel getting injured, and we think that we have this huge chance, and then it kind of gets diminished with an injury. I mean, you could be back in that era where Thaddeus Young is the guy that you're showing up to the Wells Fargo Center to go watch. I was about to call it the Wachovia Center, the OG name, but.
I want to propose one more player, and this is like a sleeper pick. This wouldn't even be one of my first 5 options, maybe like my 10th option. But I think an intriguing one is what if you brought in as the backup center, because that's something the Sixers definitely need. It was a big need the past couple seasons. What if you brought in as a backup center 2001 Dikembe Mutombo?
Dikembe Mutombo.
As the backup center. I think that would be a phenomenal fit.
That's interesting. That's definitely interesting. I think the thing that's interesting while I'm thinking about it is because he would probably be willing to play that backup role and play significant minutes and play defense. And then the strain that Joel wouldn't have to be under with playing such high level defense and offense and being the best player on both sides of the court, both ways, that pressure would be alleviated from him.
Yeah, and not like that. I mean, I think he really fits the mold of the backup centers that have done well during the Embiid era. He's a guy, and if you're talking about 2001 Dikembe Mutombo, it's a guy who's a little bit out of his prime, right? Would fit really well in the backup role, but also when Embiid misses time, he would work really well in the starting rotation. Maxey can take over the scoring with Dikembe playing great defense down there. And while he is the backup center, he's providing what, the best backup centers in the Embiid era have provided, which is great defense and rebounding. That we, our best backup centers have been guys who it's just like, all right, Embiid's on the bench. You don't really need to score the ball like Embiid did. Just get out there, play great defense in the post and rebound the ball. You saw Dwight Howard and Andre Drummond play those roles very well. And I think
the issue is the Sixers just haven't had anybody besides Tyrese or Joel that can create their own offense. I mean, that's what Tobias was supposed to be, and he just wasn't willing to do that.
That's why Dr. J is both of our number
one. So that's
one.
it's not like when you think about it, it seems like at times where the current Sixers need a guy that's close to what Joel does on offense, but also had to find out a way for that player to be on defense. But if you find a center that does that, he's a starting center. He's probably a top 5 center in the league. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So that's why it's great.
If they had a wing that could create for themselves and actually make something happen out there, and even if they had a guy like Michael Porter Jr. that could just catch and spot up and shoot that was that size and can go to the rack at times, you know what I mean? They would be a lot more better suited. So that's what's going to be interesting to see what they add to this roster between all the rumors with them willing to extend Jimmy Butler and trade for him with the draft picks that they do have. Go out and sign Paul George, maybe get LeBron, maybe trade for or maybe trade for Brandon Ingram. A lot of people are bringing up the Lauri Markkanen name, which I don't know if that would be the greatest fit. He's not really too athletic. He's a really good player, but he's just not really too athletic. So I don't know.
I mean, it would just be like an upgraded Ersan Ilyasova situation again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Definitely.
I mean, Ersan was good, but Lauri Markkanen's a lot better than Ersan.
Yeah, he's a lot better, but still,
punch with
like
offense. So he was
we need more than
somebody I forgot about, Ersan Ilyasova.
Yeah, we need more than just a unathletic stretch for it. But one thing I was actually thinking about the other night with the Jimmy Butler rumors, I really wish we still had Josh Richardson on the roster, so that when Miami comes calling to try and trade us Jimmy Butler, we can just, they're like, what do you want to give us for Jimmy Butler? We can just say Josh Richardson. That's what you gave us. That's what we're giving you. Josh Richardson. Take it or leave it. I
don't blame that on Josh Richardson, though. That's got to be blamed on the front office and picking Tobias over him, because I heard your disdain with that situation before, and you were kind of trying to blame it on Josh Richardson when he was just thrown into that situation. It wasn't his fault. So
he still stunk.
But let's get to the Eagles for the last one. The Sixers we were in agreement for. Phillies, we brought back 2 pitchers. And the last one, the Eagles. So for the Eagles, this one's interesting because you have so many different positions that you can bring somebody back for. And there's a lot of great players at different positions for the Eagles in their history. But I got an all-timer. So you want to go first or you want me to go first?
Yeah, I think same thing I did with the first 2 teams. I'll start by telling some guys I considered. I think a big need for this team is a slot receiver. Now this team has never really been known for great slot receivers. So, I mean, the best I could think of really would be like a prime Jordan Matthews or it would be a huge upgrade from what they currently have.
I was thinking about random receivers from the early. I was thinking about like James Thrash or Todd Pinkston. I thought you were going to say one of those names.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe a prime Nelly, but I mean, really, it's like anybody you would bring in as a slot receiver would just be simply an upgraded version.
Well, then again, like you wouldn't have to necessarily bring a slot receiver in. You could always bring an outside receiver in, which they don't have the greatest history with, unless you're going with a guy like Harold Carmichael, and you could put Smitty in the slot.
I mean,
well, you could put Smitty in the slot.
You could put Smitty in the slot, but anyway, that was my frame of mind when thinking about that. So I crossed the slot receiver off the list. A guy I really debated in my head was Brian Dawkins. I was really debating between Brian Dawkins or Reggie White because they could use a safety, but they also lost Hassan Reddick. And I mean, you're talking about Reggie White, the second best pass rusher of all time. You got to go Reggie White. That's my pick. You can also put him inside. Reggie definitely my pick.
Reggie White was the first name that popped into my brain when I came up with this topic, and I ended up going with Brian Dawkins because I thought the safety position could use more of an upgrade than the pass rush, but those are the 2 positions that I first thought of. I was also thinking about maybe even linebacker. Like you could think about Jeremiah Trotter Jr., but the thing about Jeremiah Trotter Jr.
You mean Jeremiah Trotter Sr.?
Senior, yeah.
Jeremiah
Trotter Sr., the thing about him is I don't know how much he would translate to today's NFL. And then you have his son already on the roster, you know what I mean? And I'm a big Devin White guy. So I think Devin White's going to carve out a contract for the Eagles for a long time after the season. I think he's going to get a 3 to 4 year deal, and he's just going to be one of the best free agency signings that the Eagles have had in quite some time. So I think I immediately alluded to the defense. I mean, you could, like, if you really think the interior of the offensive line is that bad, you could just be like, all right, I'm just going to have Jason Kelce extend
that's a
career and not be out of retirement. But I just think the offense is so loaded that I would, if I had a choice in this type of scenario, I have to go with the defense. And just think about the type of player how safeties, there's really good safeties out there in the league, but who plays like a Brian Dawkins nowadays? That's not really a thing anymore. You know what I mean? Like Jamal Adams was the closest thing to it, and Jamal Adams isn't even close to the same player that he once was. Derwin James is pretty good, but I mean, he's not Brian Dawkins. You know what I mean? And Brian Dawkins, I mean, you could put Brian Dawkins at linebacker in today's NFL, and he would just be smashing people all over the place just because he covers so well. He can blitz. He can make TFLs. He can obviously, like I said, he can tackle, and he just does everything.
So. Yeah, no, those are very good points. Definitely, the safety position is a bigger position of need right now for the Eagles, but
how do you think the scenario is going to play out at safety, like the competition, and how would you personally align the safeties, like with your defensive backs?
You got right now,
guys like Avonte Maddox, you could throw at safety if you really wanted to, or
he did play safety before. But I mean, right now, I would definitely have Gardner Johnson and Sidney Brown out there at safety. And I actually feel really comfortable with that as a safety duo. I think with those guys at safety and Reggie White on the defensive line, along with those other guys, I think would be a very good defense. One guy I was also considering, I actually forgot to mention this. Another guy I was considering, Asante Samuel. Put him out there at corner. Him and Slay, I think would be one hell of a combination at the outside corner positions. So that was actually another idea I had. But yeah, as of right now, the roster, the way that it is, I would start CJ Gardner-Johnson, Sidney Brown at safety. Obviously, you're going to start Slay at corner. By the way, Slay mentioned recently, I think it was on Twitter, he said he's looking a step faster than this year than he was last season. I hope there's a good bit of truth to that statement, because that would be.
Well, he did get his knee cleaned up, so we don't even know how much. This never came out how long he was dealing with that knee injury before he got that operation. And everybody wants to act like, he got the operation because of his relationship with the defensive coordinator and how they switched defensive coordinators and how him and Patricia didn't get along. Like, no, I mean, if you're having a nagging knee injury and you're getting up there in age, you're going to have to take care of it while you can, or things would have really unraveled for a bad situation last season.
Yeah, and also in better news on, the way the corner position is looking right now is the rumors are that James Bradbury is on his way out. He hasn't really been seen. I remember seeing some sort of rumor that they're planning on just getting rid of him, which that would be huge. And then in that case, I would have Slay start outside along with, as of right now, I would have to see in training camp and preseason who does better, Cooper DeJean, or why am I blanking on our first round pick? Quinyon Mitchell, thank you.
I think it's a must that Quinyon Mitchell starts next to Slay. And why I asked you about the safety position is because I feel like they're making out the thing where Isaiah Rodgers has had a lot of hype and steam to his name this offseason. He could possibly be the slot corner, but I think it would be a real travesty and at fault for the Eagles if Cooper DeJean's not out there starting somewhere in that secondary. I would be very upset.
I think maybe that's a good point. I think maybe,
I would throw him at safety. If you don't think he's ready to compete at corner, you have to throw him at safety. He's athletic enough to do it.
I think Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, and this is just based off not seeing training camp or preseason yet. I think both Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell are likely both ready to start at outside corner. I think it's just a question of who's even better, right?
But I don't think the competition should be limited to them. I don't think that it's not like those two need to compete with each other, because you have the resources where you start Slay on one side. That's just a given. That's already that. Slay's still playing at a very high level. You start Quinyon Mitchell on the outside corner, and then you can kind of move Cooper DeJean around from safety to the nickel corner. But I don't want to see, even though he's young too, I don't want to see Isaiah Rodgers starting over Cooper DeJean. I would be very upset.
I want to see Maddox starting in the slot.
But I mean, you know what you're getting from Maddox. He's going to play really good for a couple weeks. He's going to have some outlier games where he's playing extremely well. He's going to be like, oh, well, we're glad that we brought him back. And then he's just going to get hurt 7 games into the season and miss the rest of the season.
It could happen, but I would start him day one. Anyhow, it is now time for a final segment for my Meatball of the Week. And my Meatball of the Week, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing this girl's name correctly. That's how much of a nobody she is, and that's what she needs to learn about herself, is Chennedy Carter. Is her first name pronounced Chennedy? Is it pronounced Kennedy? It's spelled Chennedy, but I think Kennedy would make a lot more sense.
It's probably Kennedy, honestly.
It's probably Kennedy, but just for the sake of it, I'm going to call her Chennedy. Chennedy Carter, she's my Meatball of the Week because in a recent game against Caitlin Clark, she just ran up, randomly shoved Caitlin Clark to the ground, then had some choice words to say after the game, talking about other than 3-point shooting, what does Caitlin Clark really bring to the table? I mean, I'll tell you what she brings to the table. Attention.
Hold on. She did say besides 3-point shooting, though. So she did acknowledge the 3-point shooting.
Well, even if you look outside of 3-point shooting, Caitlin Clark, she's averaging 6 assists per game. Caitlin Clark is also a great facilitator as well. Shares the ball very well. She brings passing to the table. But, her 3-point shooting is bringing the most by far and wide the most attention the WNBA has ever received. As somebody also pointed out, they now have charter flights, something they never had before thanks to Caitlin Clark. You Chennedy, are enjoying those charter flights now thanks to Caitlin Clark. Everyone is seeing more money.
So definitely opened up a little bit more. And I don't even know if the impact's actually – I don't know if the impact's actually happened yet already, or it's like gradually happening and people are willing to invest more into it. And there's actually being more money put into it. You know what I mean? It's not like the initial Caitlin Clark's in the league and now all this money's already generated. I think people are generating the money for the league now because they see the potential of the league.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So, the league, the WNBA is at its absolute peak right now, far and wide. All thanks to Caitlin Clark. If it wasn't for Caitlin Clark,
did you see what Angel Rhys said?
Know your name right now, Chennedy. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Chennedy.
Did you see what Angel Rhys said?
I forget, but I remember seeing what she said.
She said something along the lines where the WNBA is not just being watched because of one player; it's being watched because of me too.
That's just an absurd.
There's no reason to throw shade at Caitlin Clark, but I do think that Angel Rhys is definitely bringing some eyes to the WNBA.
Well, okay, no. So Angel Rhys,
she is a popular player. I will give her that. She's not my favorite.
She is a popular player, but the WNBA has had popular players before, but that didn't bring in viewership. Everyone has always known who Brittany Griner was, but that didn't bring in viewership.
Brittany Griner was actually really, really popular. Like everybody, before even the incident with the marijuana thing, she was a household name.
Kelsey Plum. Kelsey Plum, everyone knew who Kelsey Plum was. She didn't bring in viewers. Sue Bird, everyone knew who she was, but she still didn't bring in viewers. Diana.
What do you think about Darren Waller's diss track to Kelsey Plum?
He is my runner-up for Meatball.
He's most likely going to retire soon, too. Apparently, he's going to retire, so that just adds one less weapon.
Well, he announced his retirement. He put out an awful song with just 95% auto-tune. A really dumb music video. That shot of him falling on the beach and the wave hitting his face. You can definitely tell that wasn't planned. He wanted to do a dramatic line there, and then a wave ended up hitting his face, and he tried to just roll with it, but it just looked awkward. It was really disgusting. Actually, you know what? He's my Meatball of the Week too. Chennedy Carter, Darren Waller, you're my Meatballs of the Week.
I think you say that though because you got a crush on Kelsey Plum, low key. Might be high.
He's a meatball, but let's not act like Kelsey Plum. Now am I even saying the correct name? Anyway, let's not. let's not act like she's not very attractive because she is. Despite
She's on the Las Vegas team, right? Las
she's
Vegas
on the
Aces.
Yeah, she's on the Aces.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
Yeah, that about we'll wrap it up for today. I appreciate you guys tuning in for episode 49 of the Paisan Sports podcast. That means we have to do something special for episode 50 of the Paisan Sports podcast. That's almost if we did a podcast every week. We took some time off. But we're almost at a year's worth of a weekly podcast at 50 episodes. So that's very interesting. Dante, next time we're on here, I want to see you with a Caitlin Clark jersey. I've yet to see someone rocking one. And that's something
maybe that's what I will do to make episode 50 special. I have been playing to get a Caitlin Clark jersey since she got drafted. So that's a possibility. Not a big one, but a slight possibility.
All right, we'll see. But thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you guys next week for episode 50.